What? We're live? Welcome. Good morning. It is Wednesday, June 2018. Wow, this year is flying by, and we are live as always on Java with Jerry from the penthouse suite of Stadium Towers here in the Platinum Triangle. Glad you're with us again. Big show for you this morning, so we will get to it quickly. As always, you can find these shows, if you aren't catching them live, on orangeslice.com. We hope you go there, and if you want it as a podcast, you can get signed up there through Podbean to have it come to your device, and then you'll have it whenever you want it, walking the dog, working out in the gym, whatever works for you. What's happening today? As always, I'll do a little commentary on some news stories, then I'll bring in my guest, a great one today, Chip Monaco, a good friend who wears many hats. He's a man of many jobs, and we'll talk about him all. He's the Director of Municipal Government Relations for Waste Management. That's his day job, but he has a bunch of others, and I don't want to give you too much of a tease about what they are. Just trust me, he's a fascinating person, so you'll enjoy this show. Our feature today will be You Can't Make This Stuff Up, and we're going to talk about it in a couple of different places, as you'll see. So let's go to the news and get to this, because I have too many questions for Mr. Monaco, and he doesn't have enough answers. So, national news. Obviously, if you've been paying attention, you're under a rock. The biggest crisis that we have of the day is a crisis on the southern border, and all the screaming and yelling about what we're doing with people who are trying to crash the gates, and particularly what we're doing with their children and separating kids from parents. You hear arguments on both sides. There's lots of demagoguery about whether, in fact, they're the children of the parents or whether or not they're rent-a-kids that the coyotes and the human traffickers have brought them. In any event, they've got audio of kids crying, being unhappy about being separated with the adults that they're with. I guess if you're seeking asylum, they keep the families together. If you're just illegally crossing, they separate the kids from you in the same way that they would if you committed any other crime, and that's causing a furor. So we will have much more of this. Look, we've been playing football, political football, with this issue of immigration for years. Both sides need to get their act together. I guess there's bills in D.C. that are being floated, the Goodlatte bill, and then one that's a compromise bill. They're coming up for discussion. Those peeps back there who are legislators better get their act together, do something, and do it quickly, because this is getting ugly. State news. Well, I picked a good one for the state news, because you're just not going to believe this if you haven't heard it. Governor Brown has signed a bill that puts a 55-gallon per person limit on your interior water consumption in the house, right? So it stays at 55 gallons, I guess, until like 2020, 2025, something like that. And then it drops to 50 gallons or less, depending on what the regulators decide you should be consuming. Now, since it takes about 40 gallons to do a load of laundry, I'm told, and about 20 gallons for you to have a shower, I don't know what you spend every time you flush the toilet or when you're cooking or if you put water in the dog bowl, but you can quickly get to 55 gallons in a hurry. So, think about it today. Decide whether you're going to wash your clothes or whether you're going to take a shower. I prefer you do that. Anyway, you're going to have to allocate a little bit on this 55 gallon. That's your limit, 55 gallons per person per day. Go figure it out. Local news. There's a couple of pieces of local news, but we're going to focus on one. Dana Point had its 4th trolley hop. I hadn't heard about the trolley hop, so I've already missed 3 of these. But apparently about 400 people got on a trolley, and then they jumped around into 14 different restaurants. It's sponsored by the Dana Point Lantern District Alliance. Not sure who they are, but thank you for the trolley hop. And so everybody gets a mug, and then they jump on a trolley, and the trolley takes you to these different bar hopping experiences in restaurants and bars throughout Dana Point. So, those of us here at Java with Jerry, we appreciate anything that comes with a mug. So congratulations, Dana Point, on the trolley hop. I think, producers, we need to go do the trolley hop next year as a remote, don't you think? We can take our mugs down, we can hand them out to people, and then go trolley hopping with a Jerry with Java mug. Anyway, we will look into that for you, and maybe we'll do a remote from that trolley hop. The other piece of news that we're going to talk about on future shows is there's a lot of talk about how we're going to fund homelessness by doing things like inclusionary zoning. I think we'll do a show on that. I'm going to talk to some friends about coming in and talking about how that's probably not a good idea. And I wanted to cover that, but if I do, I will eat up all of the show and we won't get to talk to Chip. So let's bring him in. I want my friend Chip Monaco to come on camera. We're going to do an intro of him. Chip, welcome to Java with Jerry. Thank you for doing this. Make yourself comfortable wherever you want. Let me tell you a little bit about Chip. I have to truncate this because he's just done too much. As I said, a man of many hats. For nearly 2 decades, Chip was in management and leadership in various capacities within local government. So he worked in those positions before he took a private sector job at Waste Management. He is now the Municipal Government Relations Manager, as I told you, for Orange and San Diego counties. So he's got 2 big counties that he covers for Waste Management. And there he manages their municipal government book of business, and we'll talk about what that means. He's an expert at striking meaningful relationships with stakeholders and customers alike, and certainly with local leaders because he's led them for so long. Before his role at Waste Management, he was actually in government. He started in the Orange County's Media Relations Division and then worked in the County Executive Office. He worked for 3 elected members of the Orange County Board of Supervisors and had positions as Communications and Policy Advisor, Deputy Chief of Staff, and then ultimately Chief of Staff for a Supervisor. In his last position in the county, however, he was Deputy Director of Government and Community Relations at Orange County Waste and Recycling, which is how he learned all about what he's currently doing, and we'll talk a little bit about his role there. And he was responsible for the department's strategic implementation of environmental and regulatory compliance. Now he's on the other side of that ledger, working in the industry, working on renewable energy initiatives, legislative analysis. He did some land use negotiations, public communications, as well as legal risk and liability management. So you can see he's got a really deep and rich background in government. He serves also, another hat, as chairman of the Orange County Taxpayers Association. He is a board member of the Santa Ana and Irvine Chambers of Commerce, the Association of California Cities Orange County as an affiliate member. He's a member of the board of the Orange County Public Affairs Association, the South Orange County Economic Coalition, the Santa Ana Boys and Girls Club, Clean Tech OC, Anaheim Public Utilities Board. Do you ever have time for your family?
Boy,
apparently not. And now he's a candidate for Orange City Council. Holy mackerel. He's got a bachelor's degree in political science from Chapman University, so he's a local boy living next door in Orange, and a master's in public administration from their affiliate Brandman University. And he also serves, get this, another hat, as adjunct professor in the Master's in Public Administration program at his alma mater.
Too many years in government, Jerry, because that sounded very bureaucratic. I need to learn how to write that.
I need a nap just keeping up with what you're doing. Welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
So tell everybody a little bit to begin with about that experience in government, Chip, because you spent a couple of decades doing that long before you came into the private sector, and it's a rich experience.
It was. Working for elected officials is a privilege, and so as a staffer, it's a privilege.
We don't hear that often from our staffers, but there you go, producing staff. See what a privilege it is.
And the times that I was up there are very different than the times today. And so one of the pieces of advice I give any executive assistant to an elected official today is be humble, and you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And also I tell them, smile, be helpful, say please and thank you. Those happen to be the same pieces of advice I give my kids. But they're life lessons, and we should all be learning them at the same time. But working for elected officials and working in and out of the bureaucracy, I was blessed because I started working for the elected. So I saw the policy side before I saw the bureaucracy side.
I think that's important.
And it was really important because it gave my perspective as how to get things done. And when you're in the bureaucracy, it's how to make sure you check all your boxes, slow down, avoid risk. And so when I made that transition, it was very easy for me to operate with the best available information instead of every piece of information.
And the thing I noticed about you when you were in government is you were always worried about how to get to yes, right? I mean, your job was to try to make it possible for the public to get what they wanted and to achieve what they needed to do. And I think starting with that policy perspective helps that when you become a leader inside the bureaucracy.
It absolutely does, because when you're an elected official, you're elected to get things done. You're not elected to slow things down.
So you had all that experience. What made you make the jump out to the private sector and jump in, especially to an area which is so complex now, so wrapped up in all the environmental regulation in our state, waste and recycling?
It's a fair question. 20 years of working inside government, I finally got a headache from hitting my head against the block wall there.
Well, apparently not much of a headache, because now you're running for public office. So I want to talk about how you hit your head lately.
We'll get to that. My last job, as you indicated, was in the landfill department of the county. Waste is so fascinating. It's political, it's community, it's a for-profit business.
And it's environmental. I mean, it's important.
Hugely environmental, and it's regulated. And so there are so many bees in the hive, and I've always been attracted to the bees in the hive. And my job today is to run through the hive every day and not get stung. And if I go home without a bee sting every night, then I've been successful.
I love that analogy you give, but you have been drawn to the complex, and this is complex. So talk a little bit about Waste Management. It's a giant company, and sort of tell the listeners a little bit about it and what your role is there, because you manage their municipal government relations. That's a huge thing since most of the contracts are municipally based.
Yes, in Orange County and San Diego are both very different. We are a very large company, and they're in trash and in government relations, as you know, there's no one size that fits all. Every city has their unique needs, their unique personalities, and my job is to manage two small teams in both counties that build those relationships, demonstrate value to our customers, our city customers, and make sure that we either retain the business or that we are growing by obtaining new business.
And some of that is education, because I know you also teach a lot in your roles as waste haulers to the public that's actually consuming the services.
Yes, it's very complicated, because most people view trash as you roll your cart out on Friday, the trash ferry comes, zaps it, and it disappears. And as long as that happens, every resident is very happy. But there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. We have 3 trucks that show up at your curbside every day to take 3 different commodities to likely 3 different places. That's expensive. That requires innovation. That requires efficiency. That requires smart business concepts in a highly regulated, unionized environment.
And you've made the decision as an industry to try to do as much as you can to keep the landfills from getting just inundated with stuff, and to do it intelligently. And that requires teaching us how to recycle. I remember when I got my 3 bins, I thought, I'm never going to get this. And now it's intuitive. Now I just sort of know what goes where.
It is intuitive. I wish more people would do it. Because human nature is, when you fill up your trash cart, you go to the next one. And so we're still pulling out a lot of garbage. You may not know this, but China most of our recycling materials were shipped to China.
I didn't know that.
China just changed their policy. We used to be able to send bales with 3% contamination. They reduced that standard to 0.5%.
Wow.
Which means we're pulling out a lot more material, we're burying a lot more material, and our costs have risen significantly. It's not a waste management issue, it's an industry issue, and every hauler throughout North America is facing this big issue.
I never even knew we sent our recyclables to China. That's a news item for me.
Prominent market.
Talk about what you do then in your sort of day-to-day life with these teams to work with the cities. How do you make them more efficient about how to deal with their waste and teach them the innovations that are coming? Because I know every day you guys are doing something unique.
One of the biggest hurdles that we have is we're a for-profit company. Government thinks that everything we try to teach them to do means money in our pocket. And the adverse is true. Governments have rates established, they have programs established. Our job is to actually go in and make them more efficient and try to give them opportunity to increase recycling and increase diversion at an affordable rate. Orange County is blessed. We have 3 municipally owned landfills, which keeps our trash prices extraordinarily low. Across the nation, that's not the case.
No, it really is cheaper here than it is in other places, but I think a lot of that has to do with innovation too, and you guys are always innovating. I know now you've even got innovation with what you do in restaurants with food waste. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. You indicated some of the crazy laws that come out of the state. The state has forced the private sector into more of an R&D role, including governments are now in R&D roles through their vendors like our waste hauling company. In 2009, we saw that organics was going to be mandated to be recycling, so we sent a small team to Europe to figure out what are they doing with food waste. And they were actually capturing it, injecting it in anaerobic digestion, and creating energy. Today in Orange, we have we call it our core, centralized organics recycling equipment, where we're capturing food waste from restaurants, taking it, we put it into the waste management milkshake that's chemically balanced and tested in a lab, and that material is then injected at wastewater treatment plants, converted into energy in cleaning water. The best part about this is wastewater treatment plants have engineers that have been doing this their way for 30 years. We had to go through a lot of effort to convince them to allow us to introduce this material. And it's creating more gas, which is producing more energy, which means they're not buying as much energy. reducing biosolids, which was a big issue for wastewater treatment plants, and where to bury those and dispose of them. And it's just been a win-win for all of us.
And it's really, that's an exciting thing, because as most of you who pay any attention to what's going on in water know, it's a expensive commodity, and because we have to get it over mountain ranges and from low-lying areas, we got to pump it up to high-lying areas where we've got development. It's energy expensive, right? They spend a lot of money on energy with water, and so if you guys can help them defray some of that cost in the way they manage their water facilities, that's a big win-win.
It's a big public win.
Yeah, so your trash is powering the development of water energy use. That's brilliant. So how, you said Orange County and San Diego different. How is San Diego different? What's the differences that you encounter there, and how do you get your staffs to operate in different environments for one company?
Well, again, one of the main differences in government and the private sector is we organize based on the need.
Yeah.
And so in Orange County, we have 34 cities, all of which who have a franchise. There are only 3 or 4 open market areas where it's open competitive and any hauler can go in and compete for business.
Oh, I didn't know that.
San Diego County is the adverse. It's primarily open competitive with fewer franchises.
Wow.
So it changes the entire dynamic of how you go about business.
And how many cities are in that county?
You know what, I should know that, and I don't know it off the top of my head.
I don't either. I mean, as much as we talk about doing stuff, and we've done stuff in San Diego, I know the county and I know a few of the cities, but I couldn't tell you offhand how many there are.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, let's talk a little bit about, let me switch gears and talk about your role as chairman of Orange County Taxpayers Association. Slightly different role, although it does have sort of the same public policy implications, and I think your experience in government and the private sector weigh on that. So what is OC Taxpayers about?
Most people think if you're a member of a taxpayers association that you're anti-tax.
Yeah.
OC Taxpayers is not anti-tax. We're for smart, responsible taxes.
Yeah.
Again, one of the differences in the private sector reduces costs and tries to increase revenue. Government typically tries to increase revenue on the back of taxpayers and never focuses on reducing the cost of government.
It doesn't look at the cost side of the equation.
Never.
Yeah.
And so our role is to focus on taxes that are being proposed or existing taxes and making sure that we can either push to change them, make them smarter, make them leaner, make them meaningful, and make them more transparent to the public.
And you pay, I think, attention to the kinds of things that have provided for a robust economy. So you're always watching the protection of Prop 13, which is, given whatever election cycle you're in, is under some assault somewhere.
And right now, the split roll on commercial Prop 13 attack is a huge threat to everyone, every taxpayer throughout the state, because as business has to pay more, that is always balanced on the backs of consumers. And so while the state may get more revenue, the taxpayer, the resident, the visitor, the tourist, everyone is going to be paying more for the goods and services.
And I know school bonds are an important role for OC Tax as well, because you've always been engaged in taking a look at whether or not the school bond is fair and whether it's going to achieve its result.
Yeah, we have criteria in place that allows us to provide a letter, not necessarily endorsing or supporting, but just informing the public that OC Tax has reviewed the school bond, and that we approve the process in which they're going through.
So how do you, as you're working through your professional life, Chip, how do you see your role at Waste Management dovetail with OC Tax? Is there a similarity between the two? Does one help another? Are they symbiotic? What's your experience?
I think, again, because we're private sector and we're forced to compete, it's always about a fair and responsible approach, a fair and responsible price. The OC Taxpayers Association is about fair and responsible tax. And so there's a huge amount of overlap. And it's never a bad thing as a private sector business to be in a room with other private sector businesses, hearing the challenges that they have, so that you can align yourselves to be more effective in lobbying up in Sacramento or the federal government or even at the local level about educating elected officials and regulators about responsible and fair policy.
All right, I want you to switch, and we're another hat now.
Uh-oh.
So I talked about you teaching about waste, and you teach the elected officials and your customers how to be intelligent about waste and make sure they're being good to the environment. Let's talk about Professor Monaco.
Oh, boy.
In your role in the classroom. So where are you teaching, and what do you teach these poor innocent undergraduates?
I teach at Brandman University in their Masters of Public Administration program.
Which is where you got your master's.
It's
right.
where I went to school, yes, and I'm very proud of that. Teaching was what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I coached at a high school, out of high school. I wanted to teach government classes at the high school that I graduated from.
But he decided to earn a living and have a family, and so you gave up teaching.
And I regret that decision every single day. Because my kids
Not having the family.
As my kids are sleeping in today on summer vacation, I'm waking up coming to have Java with Jerry, which is never a bad thing.
Okay, yeah, no, it's always good to have Java.
But it's a lot of fun, and it fulfills a need that so it's very personal for me.
So you've always wanted to do it, so you're doing it. What do you teach?
I teach local government, public policy, a lot of the same influences that I've had in government and in the private sector.
So let's face it, ladies and gentlemen, what he really does is he walks in and tortures undergraduates by telling them, here's what I did in my work life today. Because
it's graduates. It's graduate students.
Oh, it's graduate students.
Yes,
Oh, that's
yes.
even worse.
I'd like to teach undergrad, but I haven't had the opportunity to teach them yet.
Yeah. No, I think that's great that you do that, Chip, because it isn't very often that people who have got a couple of decades under their belt take the time away from their families to actually go do this. I know it's a labor of love for you.
Indeed.
But another hat. So, here you've got waste management, you're dealing with OC taxpayers, you're teaching, and then you wake up one morning having bumped your head throughout the night and turn to your wife and say, hey, I got a great idea, dear. Let me take some more time away from you and the kids and go give it to my city. Talk about your candidacy now.
It's an honor. I grew up, I went to kindergarten through high school in Orange. I went to Chapman.
You really are an Orange kid. Yeah,
Orange is my home, it's in my heart. I often say that my blood bleeds orange.
Yeah, you probably do.
I love it. And so if there's a way for me to give back to my community in some way, whether it's getting elected and serving 4 or 8 years, it would truly be my privilege.
So what are you hoping to do, Chip, when you get in? I mean, I think you're probably the prohibitive favorite in this race. Everybody in Orange knows you.
From your lips to God's
and
mouth.
We need bright people in government. So when you get in, what is it you really want to work on? What are the kinds of things you want to do for Orange? Because it's a dynamic town. It's 138,000 people.
Yeah, and I think my answer is going to be underwhelming in the sense that because I've been on government side for so long, I want to work behind the scenes with staff and find out what can we make better for the public behind the scenes.
Yeah, I don't think that's underwhelming.
If you go to the planning counter, you may only go once in your life as you remodel your lifelong investment.
Yeah.
And you may have one experience.
Yeah.
But how do we make that better? How do we make parks cleaner? How do we keep the city safe? A lot of those things won't be noticed right away.
Yeah.
The other exciting thing that I want to do is I really want to build the next generation, a bench for the next generation. I want to find people who love the community as much as me and start getting them on commissions, getting them engaged in the community on nonprofits, and really start identifying who's going to be that next generation of like-minded leaders that make Orange special.
Yeah, so I'm going to take a point of personal privilege because it's my show and I get to do that, and my bias is obvious because Chip is my friend. But if you want good leadership, you want someone who's really going to be there for his community because he's invested in it. He's spent his entire life in it. He's a bright mind. You really do need to jump in and help him all you can. He will teach the bureaucracy how to get to yes, because he did it at County of Orange. He will teach his constituents how to be more engaged, because he does that every day for waste management, and he'll annoy college students in a town that's got colleges in it, because that's what he does as a professor. But you'll be good at it, and so I wish you Godspeed.
Thank you so much,
I think it's great that you're doing that. Let's talk a little bit about what you see in the future in all your roles. What is the kinds of things you see on the horizon in recycling and waste? What kinds of things do you think you'll be seeing in education? What are you experiencing now as you're running as a candidate instead of as a staffer? What kinds of things should we be looking at in the next 5 years in this state, do you think, in this city, in this county?
Yeah, I think unfortunately the state is involved too much in creating markets, and through regulation, prices for waste they're going to go up.
Yeah.
And that's a tragedy, because we have such a good system here in Orange County, and we do it at such an efficient manner that state should not be involving itself right now, and that's across the board.
Yeah.
And so
in all industries, really.
All industries, and so that's going to create chaos. I think this homeless situation, you talked a little bit about that, how we solve that. I think we're on a good path with Judge Carter bringing all the players together and to the table to at least start having a regional conversation about this instead of an individual jurisdictional conversation.
Although I do have to say, and I know I'm beating an old drum, this is not a problem of the county or the city's making. This is partly a product of the fact that decades ago we decided we weren't going to provide mental health for people who really needed it. We started turning people out of the prisons because we overcrowded them because we had a dysfunctional penal system, and now we've got a bunch of criminals living among the homeless, and we've got people who are substance addicted, and that's a dangerous cocktail sitting in our community.
Again, going back to the state, I mean, when you start decriminalizing things that were criminal just a few years ago,
it's awful.
What do you expect society to we're dealing with those ills of those policies today.
And it's been visited on the cities, and now you're running to try to make those cities more efficient and effective, and it's a problem you're inheriting.
It's a problem. It's a huge cost. The expense to really deal with that problem is going to be enormous.
Yeah.
And again, the state's going to look to the taxpayer to fix that.
Right.
It's just not right.
Well, it's a conundrum, and we certainly have to deal with it and wrestle with it, and we have I think Erica's trying to show me I'm out of time. We have a load of problems, but you're right, the state keeps making more. What about on the positive side? What do you see coming in innovation that you think we could get excited about as you look out across the future?
You know, at our company, we invest hundreds of millions of dollars in innovative programs.
All the time, yeah.
All the time. And largely because of this regulation, it does force us to focus
and to get better.
And get better.
Yeah.
And so food waste was a big thing for us. Fats, oils, and grease, you'll remember, but that was a big deal 10, 15 years ago at the Sand District.
Yeah.
We're now taking those fats, oils, and grease and processing them properly and converting energy. Yeah. There's always something new that we're going to be looking at in the industry to
So we're going to bring you back. You're going to have to tell us next year when you look back, what new things you came up with, because I know there'll be a bunch of them and what's happening in government.
Absolutely.
And then by then you'll be a councilman, so we can talk about your role there. So we're hoping for that. All right, I'm being told that we're short on time, so Chip, don't go anywhere. We're going to go do our feature, and then we'll talk a little bit about next week and say goodbye to Chip and send him on his way to go do something productive in one of his many hats that he wears. So I had to think about, you can't make this stuff up last night, and I had lots of candidates, but I've decided that I already began to talk about it a little bit on this 55-gallon limit on water. 55 gallons? Are you kidding me? You can't make this stuff up. Why did I pick that one? Because that's an example of what Chip was talking about. Here is government sort of meddling in what you do day to day in a way in which they think they're solving some grander problem. Do you know why we're having the 55-gallon limit? It isn't because of the drought. Although we're always arid and we always have to be efficient with water, and you do a good job in conservation, you honestly do. It's really about global warming. It's about climate change. For some reason or another, they've linked those two policies, and the governor believes that if he limits the amount of water you use, somehow we're helping Mother Earth. We're not, Governor. You're completely off whack. You let people do what they will naturally do. They'll conserve on their own. They'll do the kinds of things that Chip teaches them to do with waste, they'll do with water. We're getting a lot smarter. You see more drought-tolerant plantings. Come on, 55 gallons per person. All right, so pick this week what you're going to do. Are you going to do your laundry or are you going to take a shower? You may have to debate with your wife which one you're going to do, but have that debate soon, would you? Because we need you to save Mother Earth. You can't make this stuff up. All right. Next week we will have another show. We'll have you back on Wednesday. We hope that you'll be back and that you'll visit us often at orangeslice.com and catch these past back shows. If people want to get information about waste management, where do they go?
WM.com.
WM.com. And for your campaign?
ChipMonaco.com.
Okay, there's all the .coms. Go find the information that Chip has for you there. We'll see you next Wednesday on Java with Jerry. Have a good week, make good decisions, and we'll see you back with your mug next Wednesday morning. Thank you.